Hey friends, I'm Rhiannon from Drawn by Rhiannon, and today I'm going to be sharing my top tips with you for how to use the Cricut machine. So for those of you who have never heard of a Cricut machine before, a Cricut is a digital cutting machine. So basically you link it up with a computer or a tablet or potentially a phone, I think, and you design what you want cutting, you tell it to cut, and then it cuts it out for you. So it's fantastic for paper craft, you can use it in fabric design, pretty much like any kind of crafting really, you can use a Cricut. So I pretty much only use mine for cutting out beeswax wrap packaging, which is a really boring use for it, quite frankly, but it can do so much more than that. So today I thought I would run down a few of my tips that I've picked up over the years of using this Cricut. So just really quickly to talk you through how they work. So this is it when it's open. So this is like the cutting mechanism here, and then it comes with these mats. And basically you stick whatever you're wanting cut, whether it's paper, card, fabric or anything, onto this mat. It's got like a sticky back onto it. That holds it firm while it's being cut, and then you pop it into the machine like this, you press go, it takes the mat and whatever you're cutting into the machine and cuts it. So just a quick explanation there if you have no idea what I'm talking about. That is the very basics of how a Cricut works. So first of all, talking about the Cricut mats. So you get all different like strengths, I guess you'd call it. Basically like different stickiness depending on what sort of material you're cutting. Because if you're cutting like very fine paper, then you want like a very light stick on it. So I go for the light grip mat for that kind of thing. Because if you're peeling it off, you don't want it to be so stuck that the paper's going to rip. But then on the other hand, if you're doing something like a really thick card or even fabric, you're going to want a heavier stick mat. So I go for either the standard grip or the heavy grip mat for that kind of thing. So that when you're peeling it off, it's going to come off fine, but you want that extra stick so that when it is cutting, it's not going to sort of peel away from the mat, so that it's going to get a nice clean cut on it. So my first tip is about the mats. So each mat comes with this protective cover on it. You need to keep hold of this. Do not lose this, otherwise you're going to get all sorts of stuff stuck to the mat while it's in storage. My first tip is that I would write the date on it that you got the mat when you started using it. So a good reason for that is maybe you've got a few different ones, you don't know which one is sort of the newer one, then you know when you got it for writing that on. But then also it gives you a good idea of how long your mat lasts. So especially if you're just starting out and you want to know sort of what are the costs involved going to be with a Cricut, if you write the date on it, then you know exactly how long you've been using it for. So you know sort of roughly how long your mat's going to last. So like with this one, I started using this in the end of November last year. It's still holding up, it's definitely starting to lose its stick, but I would say we're probably going to have until November on it. So for me, I would say the mats tend to last about a year. But obviously it depends how often you use them, what kind of materials you're using on them as well. But yeah, just having that date on gives you an idea of how long your mats are lasting. My second tip with the mats is that you want to make sure that you're using the whole surface area. So even if you're just sticking like tiny little bits, you want to make sure that you don't just stick it in the same corner every time. Otherwise just that corner is going to lose all its stick, whereas the rest of it's going to be really sticky. So you want to make sure that you rotate it round so that you're using every corner so that it sort of wears out evenly. Otherwise, when you go to use the whole mat, if it's like unevenly worn, then some of it might start to peel back, whereas another patch of it will stick really well. So it's just important to make sure that they get even wear across the whole mat. My third tip for the mats. So for those of you who don't know, I used to work in a craft shop, so I know a thing or two about these machines and sort of the company that makes them and everything. When your cutting mat starts to lose stick, do not be tempted to spray like a spray adhesive or put like glue stick or whatever over it to sort of re-stick it, because that can get into the machine, it can gunk it up, and I can tell you for a fact from first-hand experience with customers having done this, that if that then jams up your Cricut, they will not fix it or replace it. So it basically voids the warranty if you do this. So just for the cost of a cutting mat, honestly, when your cutting mat starts losing its stick, just buy a new one. Do not try and re-stick it. My final tip with the mat is when you're peeling off whatever you've just had cut, be sure to peel the mat off the material rather than the material off the mat. Basically, if you peel the material off the mat, it's going to kind of curl as you peel it, whereas if you peel the mat off the material, then your material is going to stay completely flat as you want it, and then the mat's going to come off. So there's loads of like bend on these mats, so you don't need to worry about breaking them. They are designed to be peeled off, so they've got a really good bend to them. They're very flexible. Moving on to the tools, so my next tip, I would recommend buying the toolkit. There's a bunch of different toolkits. I think I just got the basic one. To be completely honest with you, I can't remember what was included or how much it was, but the tools that I use the most, and I can't remember the names of them either, I'm afraid, but it's this like scrapey tool. So this is fantastic for getting all the sort of like leftover bits and debris off of your mat, because you want to make sure your mat is as clean as possible, because that means it's going to hold whatever you're cutting next better. So yeah, this has got sort of like quite a fine edge on it, so it's really good for just getting those little bits off so that you've got a nice clean mat at the end of it. And then the other tool that I use is this one. Again, can't remember what it's called, but this is really good for if you've got something delicate that you're trying to get off your mat. If you've done some like paper cutting, if you're making like a nice little intricate card for someone or something, this is going to make it a lot easier to get sort of like the excess pieces off the mat, so like the negative space off the mat. So it's just like a really fine little spatula kind of thing, I don't know what you'd call it, but it's got a really fine edge on it, so it's really good at just picking up tiny little pieces of card or paper or vinyl or whatever. Something that I only discovered like literally several years into having this Cricut machine is that it can do a quick mode. And basically when you put your mat in, when it comes up on the screen, it will say, do you want to do this in quick mode? And it literally cuts it at twice the speed. It is so fast. So it's for paper and sort of like lighter things like that. It's just like a small section of the materials, but it works great for when I'm cutting the envelopes for my beeswax wraps, and honestly it cuts it so fast. By the time I've like loaded the next envelope onto the next mat, it's already cut the one before. It is so fast and it really speeds up the process. Then my final tip won't apply to everyone, but if you're like me and you're in a studio at the end of your garden and the internet doesn't reach there, I would highly recommend using the USB connection instead of trying to rely on the Wi-Fi. So it does come with a USB cable in the box, and I've just found it so much more reliable. It is so much quicker going on a USB cable than on the Wi-Fi. If you've got fast internet, that's great, I'm so happy for you, but I'm just relying on hotspotting from my phone and it's not that quick. So I've found switching to the USB cable, there's just a lot less like thinking time for the Cricut, and I can get things done so much faster. So yeah, if you're finding that your Cricut's quite slow, maybe try the USB cable. It might just be your internet that's the issue. Finally, I just want to say there are so many things that a Cricut can do that when you first get it, it can be really overwhelming. So I would say just go through some tutorials, sort of start with the basics and just focus on what you want to do to begin with. Otherwise, you can just sort of be like, nope, don't know what to do with this piece of machinery. But honestly, once you get to grips with it, especially if you've used a design program of some sort before, it is pretty straightforward. Like, they try to make it as user-friendly as possible. So have a go, just try it out, and then once you're feeling more comfortable with it, maybe then you can try some other projects and really see what a Cricut can do. I hope you enjoyed this video, a bit of a different one from me today, but if you did, please give it a like, and if you haven't already, it would be lovely if you could subscribe to my channel. And if you have any Cricut tips that I've not covered here that you think everyone needs to know about, then drop it down in the comments and we can all share our tips together. Click here to subscribe and click here to watch another video. I hope you're all having a lovely day, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!